Hi guys, good morning. I want to catch you guys up on some work I've been doing. I didn't do any recording before starting this. Usually I'll start the day by thinking about what I was going to do and then go and do it, but I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I kind of just went at it. I didn't do any recording, so I'm going to catch you guys up. More work on the battle screen. This will probably be the last bit of work I do on the battle screen for now. Kind of want to take a break and work on some other things. I want to try, if I can, to not make too many episodes in a row on the same kind of content, but the nature of game programming is that sometimes you'll spend weeks on just one not particularly sexy part of the development. So I can't avoid that, if I want to make a good game, but I can maybe try. I'd still like to keep the videos just a little bit varied, so bounce between art and programming, and also for my own enjoyment as well. If I get too bogged down trying to perfect one thing, then you start to become very narrow-sighted and you start to neglect other things. So how I imagine it is this will be the last bit of progress I do on the battle scene, and if it's not long enough then I might slap some art or something on the end of this video. But I'm going to attempt to show off what I've done, so I'm going to run it. Okay, I'm going to take my 8 steps to get into the fight right there. You can see it looks kind of similar. If I wait a bit, the turns still stack up. Now I'm going to start to enter moves here, and you can see that as soon as I enter a move, the character whose move I enter, they jump into action and they step forward a bit. They do this crude kind of sword slash that's kind of like a floating icon in their head, keeping it simple. It applies like a slashing effect to the target, and then it hits them for 1, and that's enough to defeat the enemy, so they disappear as they were before. There's a few subtle things going on as well. If I stack up attacks on the same target and that target is removed, then the next most logical target is selected instead. So the next enemy on the enemy list, and that goes from front to back so far, from top to bottom. And you can see the only time that the action bars pause is when an action is being had. You can see currently I queued up three attacks very quickly there, so it's paused and then it resumes and it consumes their bars. Enemies still don't act. That is what I'm going to work on today, I think. And see, we're coming close to the victory here. The next attack should do it, which is good because I can queue up 3 attacks very quickly, so you can see that after that, yay, we win! And I'll also go back into the fight just so you can see that they all reset properly and stuff, because in the previous version they continued the dance eternally into the next fight. So that's the stuff I've been working on, and it doesn't look like much compared to the last episode, but there is a good few hours of work there getting it all right. The big progress here is the queuing of actions and the stalling for the animations being played out. So now I've got freedom to have the characters do whatever they need to do when they begin executing a spell. Some might be short, like the attack. Some might be long, like a gigantic spell of some sort. They can go as long as they want. There's controls for that kind of stuff. And then there was a few other things I did, like the little dance at the end. Instead of just cutting out of the battle as soon as you won, there's like a little bit of a win state. And then retargeting of the enemies. In the last version, if I selected attack, it would still go to this cursor position, which has nothing. Still probably shouldn't allow me to go there at all, but there's no harm in that just yet. It goes to this target instead. And so once that's down, as soon as it's deleted, my next character, Gamer, will target the most intelligent selection. Cool. So I'll briefly try and explain how the battle sequencing is done, since I think it's closer to how it will stay for now. It's not perfect, and I think I won't have the bars stall when actions are being done. So if I have them all attack, the problem here is because they've all stalled because of the actions, they kind of like get banked up and then all their bars reset at the same time. And in practice for the game, if this effort did happen, it would be kind of lame. It's especially lame here because there's no like speed stat or anything, so that they actually charge up practically at the same time. But you know, I don't think it would be great gameplay if you stacked up all your moves like this and then you had to wait a long time for all of your characters to go. The way I want the gameplay is I want there to be the least amount of waiting time as I can, because that's kind of one of the flaws of using like an ATB system versus the traditional turn-based, is at least with turn-based, someone's turn, they do their action, and then straight after that it just jumps to the next person who's ready. There's no waiting. But I think there is potential in this system as long as that wait time is minimized, but that in itself has its own problems. If like there's a long animation happening, then you'll end up queuing up a lot of turns, and the enemies will be queuing up a lot of turns, and so it'll be very hard to know what's going on. But it's stuff I'm going to try out. I don't have to have anything set in stone just yet. Yeah, cool. So I'll very briefly go to code. I usually talk too long when I open the code, but I'll try and keep it short. I think the significant things are in the step function for main, and it's all contained within this is battle. All this is like our battle sequencing. This first cluster here, this just manages our list of spells, and a spell as an object in my code is one of the objects that controls the animations and actions of a spell being executed. So like my attacks, where first the player would walk forward and then it would create the sword animation on their head, and then it would slash the enemy, and then it would deal damage, and then they walk back. All of that is part of one spell. The way they work is there's a big list of spells which is emptied at the start of a battle, and as you input commands and as enemies input their commands, they'll add it to that list. So it's kind of like a stack of spells, and then while the battle's running, it'll constantly just check that there's like a spell that's there, that's ready, that hasn't been started, that hasn't been finished, and if it does, it starts executing that, and then it holds until the next one's ready. And every time a spell finishes, we also check if the battle has ended due to that spell. And then the second cluster runs during all battle states except for if we've won. So the win state is where all the dudes spin around. If a spell isn't being cast, and that ticks up the action time bars for everything, that progresses the time in the battle. So that runs almost constantly, and I can change that quite freely. For instance, if I wanted to continue while spells are being casted, kind of like I started to discuss, then I can basically remove that, and it should work quite well. So all that's in there. Then we go to where the battle is divided by states, and the states determine how keyboard inputs are handled. So if we're in state win, then there's not a lot happening. We're waiting out a timer before the battle formally ends. While we're in command though, that means someone's command window's up, and then the keyboard navigates the little menu. And then after that, the state target's kind of similar. The key actions have just changed so that now we're navigating the cursor on the enemies, and then hitting E will select that target. You can see there's a big chunk of stuff happening here. Once we have a valid target, which also means we have a valid command, because you can't get to the target without command, then it does a bunch of checks to see if the target still exists, they're still not dead, because as the battle's ticking, the ticking of the battle and the spells is actually independent to this stuff. So when a target is valid when we selected our command, it may no longer be valid when we select our target, and the same thing goes for the person giving out the command. And then if the command, the target, and all that stuff is valid, then we add the next spell to be executed onto the list of spell objects, and that's got its own information. So you can see I've got contained in attack, and it needs the source and the target. Obviously the source is needed because we need the person to animate, and we need to read their stats for how much damage and stuff we're going to do, and the target obviously is going to receive the damage. Cool, that's the short of that. I'll just give you a look at the spell object. So this is also this is basically just a big script of something to do. You basically just run through it, divided by stages. It doesn't actually do anything until we hit start, because the instance will exist in that object list before it is the one to be executed, right? If I stall up a bunch of attacks, we don't actually want them to all execute, but once they've been given the thumbs up, they starts at stage -1, because I mean, why wouldn't you, just to make it as unreadable as I can. And stage -1 is just another check that the target, that everything's valid. For different spells it might have different requirements. A spell that's targeting multiple targets might need more sophistication here, or if I'm targeting an ally. And if for some reason if the target is not alive, we need to pick the next best target, so it'll go down the list, which is typical of these games, except for the very early, I think it was Final Fantasy 1 and some other RPGs. Oh, I think Golden Sun did that, and it was really annoying, where if you queued up and move, but then for some reason that target didn't become valid, like the target died to something else, you'd actually just drop the move altogether. Well, that doesn't happen in this game, right? What happens is it attempts to get you another target. If for whatever reason it can't get you another target, maybe the battle's ended, then we instantly just declare this as finished. And then having this object as finished tells, when we go back to our object main list that's ordering the spells, it knows that it can destroy the object and it can go to the next position in the list. Anyway, and then from stage 0, it literally just does the stuff we were doing. So this one's broken up into 5 stages. So the first stage is the player walking forward. So it's got like, we set it to battle move, which is it moving in the battle, and then we add speed to it and we move it forward, and once it's forward enough, then we say we can progress with the animation and we want that to stop again. Yep, when the player's in place, we create that little sword animation on the head, which just looks like this. It's not very interesting, but it kind of represents they're doing an attack. So we just play that out and we give a delay to the next stage. Stage number 2 is the player receiving the damaging slash, which looks like that. Smooth little slicey dicey right there. So I start playing that animation, delay for the next one, and then in the next stage we actually apply the damage. Apply the damage also does the death check as well, so it disappears instantly. In the future it'll probably happen after the animation maybe, but for now, during the animation it's fine. Apply damage also draws the number, which you might have noticed that I actually showed the number of damage that they're taking. And then the next stage after that is player walking back into their original position, and then if that's all good, then it goes back to its battle idle state and we say that it's finished. There is a little bit extra in here. My enemies don't attack yet, but technically with this same attack object should work, except they follow different rules slightly in that they don't do the forward movement or the backwards movement, but everything else should run the same. I want the spell objects to be usable by both player and enemy, obviously, because it would be a lot of redundancies if I had to duplicate every spell for the enemies and the players to work. I don't want to do that, but enemies will act slightly differently to players, I'm sure. For instance, when they do an attack, they'll probably do the blinking thing that they do in old Final Fantasies, quite like that. They won't do forwards or backwards movements or whatever. Hey fellas, nighttime Henez checking in right here, doing my rounds. It's a long one, fellas, it's too long. I'm gonna cut it here and I'm gonna make the next episode stuff I did today into another episode. Yeah, so this was a bit of a recap episode. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks guys.